From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris here on a Thursday. Good show, as always, on tap for you. We're going to talk about marijuana. As you know, if you live in the state of Tennessee, where you're watching us right now, it remains illegal. Much of the rest of the country is going in a different direction. In fact, just after this most recent election, 5 more states have legalized marijuana, either medical or recreational or both. And it's something of a trend. Tennessee, though, still maintains it as illegal. And you'll see that we do stories when people get busted with a suitcase full at the airport or otherwise. But while it is illegal in Tennessee, there's something of an oasis in Nashville. It's been almost 6 months since the district attorney, the top prosecutor in the city, announced that he will no longer prosecute cases of less than half an ounce of marijuana. Significant. Half an ounce of marijuana is not a small amount, really. I mean, there's several joints in there or whatever, but he's not prosecuting that. And there have been some changes made, talking to the local sheriff here, as well as the law enforcement officers and how they handle it. It is changed, and what it means to the city. I'm going to get into some of that, but also what it means in the big picture, legally in the courts. And, you know, outside of Nashville and Davidson County, it's a bit different. This morning, we're going to invite you to join in the conversation, whether or not you think more steps should be taken to decriminalize or legalize it here in the state of Tennessee, and what would happen if it was put to a vote. I firmly believe if there was a referendum to legalize marijuana, medical marijuana especially, first and foremost, maybe take it one step at a time, I have absolutely zero doubt it would pass. And yet our state lawmakers can't get their act together yet to pass medical marijuana to help those who this can really assist with whatever condition they have. Not there yet, but what do you think? Now, what do the lawyers think of all this, who sometimes have to handle clients who are arrested for marijuana charges and the like? This morning, one of them with us, he's been on this program before, is Kevin Teets. Good morning to you, Kevin.
Good morning, Nick. How are you?
Good to see you. Thanks for coming on this morning. I know we did a story
Absolutely.
and a program last year with you and a colleague of yours. I guess you have clients, maybe currently now, and have in the past, dealing with marijuana charges across the state, correct?
Absolutely.
How have things changed, if they've changed in any way? What have you observed?
Well, I've certainly observed that in Nashville, there's been, few to little prosecutions at all with simple possession. And that is largely due to Glenn Funk, the district attorney, deciding not to prosecute cases for half an ounce or less of marijuana, which is a good thing. I mean, that's essentially people that are using marijuana for their personal use are not seeing their cases prosecuted in Nashville. We saw legislation in the local cities in Memphis and in Nashville a few years ago where they attempted to decriminalize marijuana and essentially gave the officers discretion to decide whether or not they were going to issue a criminal citation or issue a civil citation for simple possession. And then we saw the legislature come in and basically preempt those cities' 2 laws and say that those cities' 2 laws were to fail because the cities could make no laws that infringed or that infringed on the state policies across the state. So, that was actually a time, I think, where we would see the legislature moving in a direction that was against the will of the people, that I believe that are in favor of decriminalizing simple possession, use of marijuana. Tennessee is now one of, I believe, 14 states in the country that don't allow some form of marijuana use, whether that's for recreational use or for medical use. But across the state, we have a large discrepancy, I would say, in how marijuana laws are enforced. I mean, in Nashville, you've got the district attorney who's not enforcing anything at all that's half an ounce or less. But you go any direction outside of Davidson County, and you're still seeing prosecution that could be anywhere from somebody being jailed for marijuana possession to up to a year of probation, which can really be a downward spiral for a lot of people if they're placed on probation and they're drug tested subsequently to that and they're still using. It can be a situation that causes a lot of grief to someone in their family, from job loss to longer periods of incarceration. So it's something that I wish the legislature would step in and legalize, certainly for medical purposes, but even for recreational use. I think Tennessee is behind the times on this.
What do you think, Kevin, in your experience with what you've seen? I mean, I think most people would say, look, we need to go after and prosecute someone if it remains illegal in Tennessee. The folks that come in to the area with suitcases full of marijuana that obviously they're going to try to sell. And they're saying, if you're coming in with, pounds and pounds of marijuana, we're going to get you. But I mean, the vast majority of those caught with marijuana, is it not truly those who have less than half an ounce and it's mostly for personal use?
I would say absolutely, but even larger quantities. I mean, I've got a client right now that he was diagnosed with testicular cancer and lived up in the state of Washington and came down to Tennessee where he was going to work for several months. There are studies out there medically that say that the people that are using marijuana, that it can actually decrease the chances of cancer reoccurring. So, this client certainly had more than a half an ounce in his possession, but he was coming from a state in which it was legal to Nashville. He got caught with a little over a pound of marijuana in his possession, but he was not using it for distribution. It was for his personal use. He knew he was going to be in a location where he wasn't going to be able to legally acquire marijuana for several months. So, you have situations where people that have larger amounts of quantities on them, it still can be for personal use. But yes, to answer your question, most often it is people that get caught. It is people that get caught for personal use. And there's been studies as recently as 2018 that show that that there's a disparity in the arrest or citations for marijuana possession that shows that African Americans are much more likely to be arrested and charged with these infractions or violations of the law. So it is a crime that is being punished primarily for people that are using it personally, and I think that's the will of the people is ready to change on that.
I'm curious too, with just regard to your client who has it for medical purposes. How was he caught? I just wonder how did they catch him with it?
It was a traffic stop and a drug dog is what happened. But you and I have talked about that as well with drug dogs, and I know we may get into this a little bit later on. But Tennessee is a state, of course, in which hemp is legalized. Anything with 0.03 level THC or below is considered legal hemp in Tennessee. And a drug dog that's doing an interdiction stop, they're not able to distinguish between what is legal marijuana or illegal marijuana and legal hemp product in the state. So, that's an area where the laws have not yet caught up, where the legislature is not caught up, and nor has the court system in catching up and recognizing that distinction when it comes to Fourth Amendment search and seizure cases.
Let's hit on that real quick. I was going to bring it up later. Let's do it now with regard to drug dogs, and maybe because Nashville, some would say, is being more progressive with this approach. One of its judges, someone who I know and is a good law and order judge, is Judge Steve Dozier. One of your clients, one of your colleagues' clients was before Judge Steve Dozier. And what was it? He issued a statement earlier this year with regard to whether or not he can move forward with a case when you have a drug dog that was used to catch the person and that dog can't tell the difference between hemp and marijuana.
Yeah, absolutely. That was Joey Fuzon's case. Joey is an excellent lawyer and very well known on the areas of prosecution and marijuana use and also in the hemp industry. And in Joey's case, what happened is that the charges got dismissed for other reasons, but one of the issues that was brought up in the case was whether or not the drug dog could distinguish between illegal marijuana and legal hemp. The judge ultimately decided that the case was going to be dismissed on other grounds, but in his opinion, in his order, the judge essentially said that this is an issue of first impression and one that needs to have some consideration perhaps in the future going forward on Fourth Amendment seizures, search and seizure cases. If a drug dog is the reason why an officer has cause to search a vehicle, how can that drug dog determine what is illegal marijuana versus what is legal hemp? They smell the same, they look the same. You can't distinguish the differences between those two plant-like substances absent some very expensive, high technological advancement that actually looks down at the molecular level of the plant-like substance and can distinguish and determine what level of THC is in the plant substance. That's the only distinction between the two. is the level of THC that is in the product. A drug dog is certainly not qualified as an expert to do that determination, nor is the human eye or human nose.
Well, listen, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got some phone calls, and I want to piggyback on what you just said there, because I would imagine, and I know this as a fact, it kind of puts law enforcement in a pickle. You know, I mean, they're trying to do their job, the officers are, and they recognize, okay, we may have some question about what we have here is whether it's hemp or marijuana. I can't prove it one way or the other, and I would imagine law enforcement officers here in Davidson County, because of what the DA has kind of put into place, are sighing a bit of relief, whereas law enforcement officers elsewhere are like, well, I guess we have to do this, but is this going to be handled right in court? We'll address that and more with our guest, Kevin Teets, attorney, and take more of your phone calls, or we'll start with those when we come back right after this.